I would like to first express our gratitude to you for honoring us by your presence. You are here at China Institute for International Studies. This is a major think tank of China's foreign policy. Scholars today come not only from my institute, but also from Beijing University, from China Institutes for Contemporary International Relations. Mr. President, you have a long and rich expertise in academic and political career. You got your master's degree and a PhD at New York Columbia University. You taught at the University of California, Berkeley, and then Johns Hopkins University from 1983 to 1991. And from 1991 to 2001, you worked at the World Bank and spent 5 years in China, India, and Russia, managing large-scale development and institutional transformation projects. And since 2001, you advised the interim President Ahmadzai and served as a finance minister in the transitional Islamic State of Afghanistan. And before becoming President of Afghanistan, you served as chairman of the Transition and Coordination Commission, which was responsible for transferring authority from foreign to national troops. And you were sworn in as President of Afghanistan exactly 1 month ago. So this is the first time you visit a foreign country as a head of the state. You choose China as the first foreign country to visit in your capacity of the President of Afghanistan. This is a very strong signal of the importance you attach to the cooperation and friendship between our two countries. We got the message. China is working hard to help you to realize a smooth triple transition in the fields of economy, politics, and security. My institute is working hard to promote an even better understanding between Chinese and Afghan. So I think scholars here are eager to hear anything about Afghanistan, about the regional situation, and about the future of your country. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming His Excellency President Ghani.
Thank you, Mr. Director. It's an honor and pleasure to be with you. Your reputation, your history, and your current scope of work is impressive indeed. I'm very grateful that you've held 6 meetings on Afghanistan during various years, bringing about many stakeholders together. China is of central strategic interest to us, and our commitment in friendship is deep and long-lasting. Next year, we're going to celebrate the 60th anniversary of our friendship. In 2015 is going to be named the year of Afghanistan-China friendship. Let me focus on our foreign policy. What is our objective? Our objective is to become the platform for cooperation between and among our 5 circles of foreign policy. Let me describe to you what these circles are and then elaborate on them. The first circle is the circle of our neighbors. And China is our largest neighbor, though its smallest border with us. Geography cannot change, but political economy can transform geography. To the problems I'll come subsequently and to the opportunities. Our second circle is the Islamic world. We are 99.9% Muslim. and consequently are bound by fate, by history, and by culture with the Islamic world. Anything happening in our country affects the rest of the Muslim world, and anything affecting the Muslim world affects us. Our third circle is United States, NATO, European Union, Japan, Australia, Canada. The tragedy of 9/11 brought us together. The military combat role of the third circle will end on December 31st, 2014. Now we're focusing on creating the platform for enduring economic, political, and cultural relations with the circle. And our first point of intersection between the first and the third is how Afghanistan will become a model of cooperation between China and the United States and the rest of NATO ISAF. Our fourth circle is our most significant medium to long-term circle. That's Asia. Asia is about to end its long war. 19th and 20th century were dominated by two long wars, the European Long War and the Asian Long War. The European Long War and the main continent was brought to an end after World War II with the formation of the Community of Steel and Coal and gradually being transformed to the European Union. The legacy of that long war, of course, is Ukraine today. But for the main continent, conflict between states is almost becoming inconceivable. Asia, by contrast, became the battleground during the second half of the 20th century. West Asia is still the battleground. But in the next 20 years, we hope that these battles will end and the Asian continental economy will form into a massive global power that would transform not only Asia, but the world. In the next 20 years, it's very conceivable that China and India, the global powers of 16th to the end of 18th century, will again constitute 40% of the global economy. That transformation is critical to us. Our fifth circle of foreign policy are international organizations, corporations, non-governmental organizations, and global networks. Our civil society networks are strong. Our business community is evolving. Our women's organizations are vibrant. You see 3 of my colleagues who are all elected members of parliament sitting across you. So when we see these 5 circles, and the objective is to become platform, I operate out of a framework that I've designed myself. It's called OPTIC. Objective, problem, threat, information, and capabilities. So I'll discuss each of these then at the program. Because our time is short, I'll stay at the strategy level to answer your questions because we have to meet the Prime Minister. And then maybe in a future opportunity, we can discuss and dive deep more into the program level and project level. What's the problem? First, how do we define the problem? The problem is defined as the gap between the objective and the current reality. So let me take the gap first. What's the gap? We, in Afghanistan, our potential is to become the land bridge and the roundabout of Asian cooperation. Our current reality is that we are the battleground between contending forces. Networks of violence that are threatening China, that are threatening the West, and are threatening the Muslim world are operating from our frontier. These networks are unique. Prior to the emergence of these networks, movements, political movements had one focus: capture of state authority. Their contention, whether it was China of 1930s and 40s, Vietnam, Algeria, you name it, was to capture state power legitimately and use state power for transformation. These movements are dedicated to the destruction of state systems. That is their fundamental characteristic. Because of this, there is no reconciliation between those types of networks that are global. Afghanistan to them is a battleground. Afghanistan is not an area. This needs to be differentiated from legitimate political opposition whose objective is to join power and shape power. Taliban fall in the second category. Al-Qaeda, Eastern Turkestan movement, and a number of others fall in the first category. Furthermore, the second thread is failing states. When a state fails, it poses a fundamental challenge to all state systems, not just to itself. Syria, Iraq, Yemen are not remote from you and me. Anything that happens in those that weakens them opens up a fissure for possibility of movement. Because movements dedicated to terror are like cancer. They jump and they find new hosts. And weak states provide a ground for them. Thirdly, are states that use non-state actors as their instrument of policy. When a state resorts to the use of non-state actors and endorses and supports them, it threatens the entire state system. And of course, this kind of resort comes itself as an act of weakness because state institutions are not strong. So they resort to it. But one problem has become clear, and China has been at the forefront of articulating this. There cannot be a double standard regarding terrorism. We must recognize it because it's a common threat. And we must be able to confront it. Because of this, once we have decided this problem, so now the objective is Afghanistan has the potential to become the uniting ground for Asia's continental transformation. We are 8 hours by road from Delhi. We're 6 hours by plane from Beijing. Every single one of our neighbors we can reach within 3 hours of flight or 10 to 20 hours of drive. We are in the middle of 3 billion people. 1 billion of whom in China, in India alone, are a middle class. Connecting to these 1 billion and interacting with these 3 billion is fundamental to our foreign policy. Because of it, foreign policy to us is domestic policy. We do not see the classic separation between foreign policy and domestic policy. The two are integrated. Second, we need to understand direction, future direction, because threat is also an opportunity. Threat and opportunity are two sides of the same coin. What is the direction of the future? We have a choice. In 20 years, Afghanistan can be a central node of Asian connectivity. It brings Central Asia's immense energy resources and connected to the south. It becomes the key hub of connectivity between China, South Asia, and West Asia. It becomes the one of the key financial centers for connecting these four parts, a railway system that interconnects all of Asia. Until Afghanistan's railway is built, just-in-time production in Asia is inconceivable. Because you have to go and connect. We want to become the central hub of energy trade. and oil and gas pipelines, etc. So you can see a dense network becoming possible. This dense network allows everybody to connect. Afghanistan was this type of place between 16th and 18th century. The old Silk Road was a center of connectivity. We did not ask people what their nationality was. We asked them what their trade business was. And we had very sophisticated systems. I spoke this morning in Tsinghua University about this, and we can share it. But what's the threat? The threat is that the state actors in the region choose my country first against my region first. My country first is going to take us to destruction. My region, as a win-win solution, is the way that we need to move. Because if we tolerate existence of these networks of violence on our soil, if we do not cooperate, if we do not see a larger increase in the size of the pie, we will be condemning ourselves to poverty. Since 2008, poverty in Pakistan has increased by over 10 million. Asia, despite its phenomenal growth, let us not forget, is home to the largest number of poor people on the globe. Transformation of the poor into stakeholders is absolutely essential, because it's poverty that provides the breeding ground. And the other is environment. Floods, earthquakes, natural disasters do not recognize natural boundaries. We must cooperate. Deforestation. Afghanistan provides, except for China, the headwaters of every single one of our neighbors. Deforestation in our country is a major threat. So it's this balance of threat and opportunity. I want you to leave with an image of the opportunity and a firm understanding of the threat, because we alone cannot contain the threats. But let us look back into the other side of the equation. Capabilities. First, on security. The image of Afghanistan is of an insecure place. But we have some of the most significant capabilities today in this area. Let me just briefly mention some. We have a commando force of 12,000. It's the most experienced fighting force in the region. Not that our neighbors do not have capabilities, but thank God they have not experienced continuous conflict. And what we need to understand, that the force that is seen, operation, Mr. Mohammadi is here, he can speak to you in great detail, is a very different force that is set behind consoles and is done virtual work. Our national army is an all-volunteer army. 6 Army Corps commands today are deployed across Afghanistan and in the capital division. An all-volunteer army combined of about 192,000 that is dedicated to the defense of our home. And let me just offer you one simple fact. When we started the security transition, and President Karzai honored me by asking me to lead it, everybody around the world was saying in 2014, Afghanistan is going to implode. Today, on December 31st, as per schedule, the fighting role of the international forces is going to end in Afghanistan. We are going to use the first week of January to celebrate our armed forces. They are capable, they are experienced, they are dedicated. So if people tell you Afghanistan is at the risk of collapse, please tell them to think twice. Similarly, our police. In terms of enforcement of rule of law, they may have some problems. But we have at least a dozen people. Mr. Atmar led the Ministry of Interior, and so did Mr. Mohammadi, who, when they faced with terrorists, have embraced them physically to be blown up rather than allow civilians to be harmed. And we have very significant intelligence capability. Ask ETI what our intelligence capabilities are, and they will tell you. In addition to this, we come with first-rate infrastructure. Not that we built them, but our allies did. We have over a dozen military airports. Bagram Airport, just in the vicinity of Kabul, was the airport that at the height of the NATO ISAF presence took the largest flights per day in the entire world. More flights per day landing in Bagram than any other airport, civil or military, in the world. So there are networks of capabilities in the security area that are really important to understand. These have been brought together now. Next month, by the end of next month, thank you for reminding me of my 1 month in office. And you see how significant China is. I wanted to mark my first month here. By the end of the next month, we'll have a coherent national security strategy within which a national defense strategy, national police strategy, and national intelligence strategy are going to be embedded. And within this universe, we again see very much cooperation between our 5 circles. China, one reason I came first is again because we're looking very much forward. Both President Xi and President Obama have endorsed the concept of a trilateral approach in a model of cooperation. The word of win-win is around us in this regard. Second, on the economy, because the question that is asked is, in a country that receives $4.1 billion in security assistance, which is twice the national revenue that it produces, is it viable? In a country that is the largest producer of drugs, to be blunt about it, then home to some of the poorest people on earth, is it sustainable economically? So let me articulate our assets. Again, in terms of the economy, I'll speak another 5 minutes and 10 minutes, and then is it 10 minutes or how much do I have? 5? 10. Then and 10. I'm on time to allow you questions. First, our location. For 200 years, our location has been a problem. In the next 20 to 50 years, our location is going to become solid gold. In real estate, you know what it is. Location, location, location. And we aren't going to be the hub of connectivity. What we've requested China, and President Xi has very kindly agreed, is to help us draw a national infrastructure plan that will transform our location into a central objective. Realistically, Afghanistan's connectivity, the way Singapore demonstrated, will be bringing massive resources. But more than that, it will create a culture of work and a culture of operation management that will make us learn and build upon the very successful examples of East Asia. Our second advantage is water. Our second asset is water. We provide water to all our neighbors except China, because we share with China headwaters, but it's joint. And with every degree of global warming, our water is going to become more valuable than the oil of our neighbors. We are only using 10% of our water now in modern infrastructure. With water management, Afghanistan will become a center of agricultural productivity and resource management. Our third asset is our entrepreneurials. Afghans are very similar to the Chinese. You live in Afghan and he'll make money. Even in Moscow, they've made money. Our officers in 1978 were forced out in 1992, were forced out. I went to one building in Moscow, from nothing, they had created $400 million worth of capital. This is from the old Silk Road culture. We thrive on networks. We are among the most entrepreneurial people on earth, but we take heart to discipline. But this entrepreneurship, like Chinese entrepreneurship, needs to be unleashed. You remember when restrictions on Chinese farmers were lifted and township and village enterprises started. I think I've been to a third of your country, so in particularly around Xiaolongdi, I know every village and every township. Afghans are extraordinarily entrepreneurial. East and Central Asia, this entrepreneurialism was wiped out by 70 years of Soviet rule. In Siberia, there's very little sign of it. But in Afghanistan, like China, there's this immense. Fourthly, we have money. 13 years ago, we hardly had any cash. Today, because of that massive foreign presence that came, there are tons of money. There's little, but it's not capital. We have money, which is in cash, but it's not capital because it's not productive. It's not harvest. And then fifthly, we have our mineral world. China is the workshop of the world. 1/3 of our geological resources that have been surveyed are estimated between $1 trillion and $3 trillion. This is only a third. And the richest area that is along our borders, 60 kilometers along each of our borders, has still not been surveyed because international rules require agreement. And you know that the border area along Turkmenistan, along Iran, along Uzbekistan is potentially the richest oil and gas area. Now, all this connects to a fundamental issue, human capital. And in terms of human capital, two observations. One, at the level of leadership, you're going to see phenomenal teamwork and energy that comes out of mutual trust and confidence. Human capital is utilized when there's a clear strategy. Now that we've articulated a very clear strategy, the second part of it is teamwork in a culture of trust. And the capability that inherits in our men and women is going to be harnessed. But second is, we do have major gaps in our human capital. And that's where we are collaborating. China has just agreed to provide assistance for 3,000 scholarships. And formation of human capital is going to be central to our strategy. The reason we are beginning first with our location and resources, and then focusing on our mining, is that we want to make sure that the capabilities are there. So I hope that I've covered a set of capabilities as well as weaknesses. The weaknesses are the corruption, the prevalent corruption, and narcotics. Each of those, the answer to the first is political will, coherent perspective, and gradualism. We cannot wipe out all of these in one day. We must not have a situation of what I call the linen tango, one step forward, two steps backward. We must have a situation where every step forward is followed by another 2 steps forward, etc. We've learned that great leaps forwards are usually imaginary, an illusion. The elite cannot impose a great leap forward because your history showed that adventurism of the state itself is very dangerous. A path of transformation must be steadily sought through, implemented, checked, and monitored. Now, let me come to information and conclude. We need to run our foreign policies and domestic policies based on solid information. We cannot have policies that are based on wishful thinking or on sheer reaction. What becomes very important to the sense of strategy is that strategy in an environment like ours is a balance between chaos and order. It's much more like running a computer company where products change every 6 months than on the stable 5-field approach of Porter, where manufacturing had a stable recognition pattern. But objectives are extremely clear, important in this. And as a result of this, we want to go from a situation of uncertainty to relative certainty. In this regard, it becomes important, and we rely on institutes such as yours to help us with pattern recognition, with emerging possibilities. And we hope that you become advocates for an approach to Afghanistan that allows you to recognize that this is not a problem awaiting to be solved. It's an opportunity waiting to be utilized. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, in a limited time, you give us very interesting, very rich, and very comprehensive speech. We read in your speech not only wisdom from the head of the state, but also from an economist and a university professor. Congratulations, thank you. So your speech is so interesting, so inspiring, that I am sure that there are still a lot of questions from the audience. With your permission, I would like to open the floor for questions. Yes, Yuan Zhongze is the Deputy President of the Institute. Please, Yuan Zhongze.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you for your wonderful speech. By the way, that's the most extraordinary speech I've ever heard about Afghanistan. It's quite inspirational. And that's why I can tell your name, actually, Ghani, in Pushtu means rich, very rich, right? You're rich, you have lots of ideas. You're also a very distinguished economist. In your speech, you touch upon the economic challenges in Afghanistan. So my question actually is, would you go a little further to elaborate more on this? What are the most pressing challenges for Afghanistan in the next 3 to 5 years, for example? What's your vision and your plan to utilize those resources just now you mentioned in your speech to get it right? Thank you very much.
Should I answer one more? And how many minutes do I have? You see an academic obeys. So 2 minutes answer?
We will take another question perhaps.
Okay, then why don't you take 3 questions?
3 questions, okay. Lan Jianxue is a researcher from China Institute of International Studies. Lan Jianxue, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. To my understanding, Afghanistan is facing an opportunity, new opportunity for peace and reconciliations. And Mr. President, in your consideration, what are the priorities of your administration, and how will you and your team cooperate with your colleagues, including Mr. Abdullah, in promoting the transition process? Thank you.
Sure.
Another question, yes, from China Institute for Contemporary International Relations, please.
Thanks, Your Excellency, Mr. President. I would like a question about Sino-Afghanistan economic cooperation. You see that from 2001, China's cooperation, especially state-owned cooperation, played a very active or positive role in Afghanistan's economic reconciliation. And there are several joint projects in Afghanistan. But according to my humble observation, I found that the MCC project in Anak-Kabman and the CNPC project in Amdaria Basin, oil basin, are facing some problems. And in your opinion, Your Excellency, what's your suggestion for both sides so that we can carry out this project very smoothly? Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
You have 8 minutes.
8 minutes. Yes. when you have a tough director on the one side and the Prime Minister of China on the other, you have to be disciplined. So thank you. I'll take the other first and then take the bulk of the time to answer your question, Mr. Zhongzi. First, on peace. Dr. Abdullah, I, and all the people of Afghanistan have a consensus. The battle will not end in the battlefield. It will end up in a conference table. The lesson is very clear. When you have political opposition, you need a political solution. I hope that our conduct in the last 6 months showed you that we are not after formalities. I won the election, but from day one, when I ran for office, I said a government of national unity was an imperative. And we're proud to have formed a government of national unity because that means we can have consensus on all major policies. And peace is the most fundamental of those, and we will act with consensus, with determination, and we will bring this battle to an end. Because Afghanistan's future economy, future prospect, requires normalcy. You know, imagine you're an Afghan woman and your daughter goes to school. Till she comes back, you're terrified whether a suicide bomber is going to blow her up. That's the reality we live in. With, I want to end that reality so that an Afghan child can walk to school, go attend the mosque, go shopping without the threat hanging over. Every day we're losing 50 to 100 people. If it were another country, every day there'd be national mourning. We want to lose our indifference to blood and become sensitive. We want to value life. Our children demand of me, who's responsible for valuing our life? And the answer is very clearly, my colleague and I are responsible for this. So we are articulating that, and again, China is going to be a very important factor in this. Secondly, in terms of the projects, they've had mutual problems. I've done an intensive review. There are some parts where the Afghan government and Afghan companies have clearly failed to perform their duty. For instance, provision of security to INAT Mind. I've just carried a comprehensive assessment of the capital and its 4 provinces and the Logar province. Incidentally, where my family has been for 600 years, is one of those that will become the center of our attention as part of the capital division. And we'll focus in earnest on it. There are other issues where our Chinese counterparts have to move. For instance, their commitment on building the railway. Because they promised a railway, because without the railway, we cannot take the copper out. It's simultaneously the value chains. We are not interested in exporting copper as copper. That will turn us into a 19th century mining town. We need to have the value chains that allow us to create prosperity. And I think this is extremely important. It's also that there were assumptions regarding the next critical commodity, which is iron. Afghanistan will become the largest producer of copper and iron in the world in the next 20 years. We need to take the market conditions and manage supply and demand very carefully. When the contract was made, copper prices were very high, then they dropped. Last week, the movement is again good. We need to project these and make sure that the value chains together make the proposition profitable. On Ahmadzai oil, today I've had very good news from Afghan capitalists. They're willing to invest $600 million in a joint venture to create a refinery. Because Uzbekistan has been the major problem of refinery, we can solve this through joint cooperation. We will focus on these indeed. On your question on the economy. First, again, it's an image problem. The majority of the Afghans live in a legal economy. But the market instruments to help the legal economy function have been underdeveloped. The first issue, if you look at all across Asia, I did a report on this when I was part of the panel of UN on the empowerment of the poor. I did the section on property. 4 billion people around the world, a lot of them in Asia, don't have firm property rights. We intend to create firm property rights, particularly beginning with our capital city, and then moving to rural areas. Because as long as these assets are not secured, you cannot harness the entrepreneurial things. Second is a goal. We've become a consumer society, and the consumption is paid by foreign aid. Our goal is to become an exporting nation. Only by a clear goal of becoming an exporting nation can you really lift the energies. Because if you just go for import substitution, it will begin patronage. But it's by export. Turkey demonstrated this very, very significantly. And of course, southern China was the first illustration of this, as was Singapore. So part of this is to develop the market instruments where the market functions. Because the most fundamental weakness is not that of the state, it's that of the market in Afghanistan. We don't have the legal instruments. Banking, insurance. Afghan property is not secure, Afghan investment is not secure. And we need to make this secure. The second issue is infrastructure. Because of that, we're joining forces with China to create a national infrastructure plan. Because people need to understand the drivers of growth. And without the railway and highways, you cannot bring about market integration. Market integration to us is not just national, it's regional. Because every part of connectivity as a landlocked country allows us. Imagine price fluctuations when your goods are detained 6 months. Engines, machines for our power projects have been held for as much as 6 months in our neighbors' ports. We have to have a week's basis, and that means negotiation of transit agreements. Transit is vital to us, even more than capital investment. The other part is job creation. We have a society where 70% of the population is under 30. If we fail to create 1 million jobs within 1 year, we'll have serious social dislocation. So, New Deal type of programs that can become the ground for job creation, that means the state has a fundamental role in ensuring stability, social harmony, and human security. That means poverty eradication then has to be done through an instrument of joint market and state. In terms of harnessing the private capital, we're entering a compact similar to what South Korea did in 1960s. In Malaysia. Without this compact, the private sector will not feel secure to invest. And the last part is seeking direct foreign capital investment. The problems of MCs, I've had detailed discussions, for instance, with our telecom sector. Our telecom sector is our most modern. And we are removing obstacles. In every trip that I take, the private sector goes with me. We have a delegation of 50 people right now in China. And this dialogue is going to become intense. And then, don't forget, micro support, micro loans, and formation of small and medium type enterprises. It's fundamental to us to get small and medium enterprises functioning as well as large. Our goal is to create at least 50 companies, each of which would be worth 500 million to $1 billion during these 5 years. And I think it's possible. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Mr. President, Your Excellency. We would like to have more time to discuss with you, but we know that you have a very tight schedule. please be sure that your visit in China will be a milestone for the relationship between China and Afghanistan. And your visit here will be one of the most important moments in the history of the CIS. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You honored me. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.